Leave, my Aunt Pamela snapped during Grandpa's will reading. Her voice dripped with entitlement, as if she owned it all. The lawyer, Edward Larson, frowned, shaking his head slowly. His name is in the will, he said firmly. The room went dead silent. This is Lucas Hayes, 29, a mechanic. I make $65,000 a year doing honest, skilled work. I'm the best mechanic Bruno's auto shop has ever seen. I can diagnose most engine problems just by listening to them idle. My parents, Robert and Diane Hayes, are cut from the same tough, hard-working cloth. Dad's been swinging hammers for construction crews since he turned 18. Mom cleans houses for rich Lincoln Park families who practically wipe their butts with $100 bills. But God forbid she's 5 minutes late because of traffic, or they lose their minds. My parents raised me to believe your word means something. An honest day's work deserves honest pay. You judge someone by how they treat the janitor, not how much they drop on fancy lunches. We lived in a beat-up 2-bedroom apartment in Bridgeport until I was 16. Paper-thin walls where you could hear neighbors screaming about money every night. A radiator that clanged like someone beating a drum with a wrench. Parking was a war zone, especially after snowstorms when plows buried half the cars. Dad came home every night covered in sawdust and drywall chunks. His joints screamed after 10-hour shifts on scaffolding. But he'd still sit down with me to help with algebra homework. Mom worked back-to-back shifts scrubbing other people's toilets. Yet somehow, she made our little apartment feel like a home. Here's the thing, I never once heard them complain. They were never ashamed of getting dirty for a paycheck. They never made me feel ashamed either, even when we ate soup 3 nights in a row. Grocery money was stretched thin. They had pride in what they did. They taught me to have that same pride. But then there's the other branch of the family tree. Grandpa Walter Kowalski was the real deal. Pure old-school grit and muscle. Back in 1978, he started with nothing but a beat-up Chevy pickup. A toolbox full of second-hand wrenches. A work ethic people today can't even imagine. He crawled through sewage, fixed broken pipes in -20 winters. Built Kowalski Plumbing and Heating into Chicago's biggest commercial operation. By the time I was old enough to understand success, Grandpa Walter was clearing 7 figures annually. Had more commercial contracts than most companies could dream of. The guy could fix anything and treated every customer like family. Unfortunately, his other 2 kids, my Uncle Dennis and Aunt Pamela, took a different path. They decided actual work was beneath them. Uncle Dennis, 47, struts around like he's a CEO. He's just a middle manager at Strategic Solutions Incorporated. Drives a Lexus he can barely make payments on. Lives in a tacky McMansion in Naperville with granite everything. Acts like he's running Apple instead of some boring corporate gig. Wears suits that cost more than most people's car payments. Loves throwing around fake corporate buzzwords like maximizing human capital. Aunt Pamela, 44, is somehow even worse. She married a trust fund baby whose fortune evaporated in 2008. Still shops at Nordstrom, drives a Cadillac Escalade 3 payments behind. Talks about family standards like she's descended from British royalty. Not the daughter of a man who installed toilets for a living. Then there's their pride and joy, Justin Cole. Where do I even start with Justin? My cousin, also 29, the poster child for spoiled entitlement. Went to Northwestern on his parents' borrowed money. Got a degree in strategic marketing and digital innovation. What does that even mean? He spent 4 years learning to make PowerPoint slides. Spouts business buzzwords. Never touched a tool more complicated than a screwdriver. Acts like physical labor is for peasants. He was handed a meaningless job at a trendy tech startup. It burned through investor cash. Justin strutted around like he was the next Steve Jobs. Every single family gathering was the same humiliating circus. Pamela would corner Mom with her fake sympathy tone. Diane, you look so tired. Have you ever thought about finding something less demanding? Dennis would slap Dad on the back, patronizing him. Robert, expand your skill set. Think about the bigger picture. The way they treated me? Brutal. Every accomplishment of mine was minimized. Every stumble was magnified and broadcast for everyone to hear. When I made varsity wrestling as a sophomore, Pamela spoke up. Justin's debate team captain and student council treasurer. As if that mattered more. When I earned my ASSE certification at 19, a huge accomplishment, Dennis sneered. Why limit yourself to blue-collar work instead of management? Justin never missed a chance to humble brag about his marketing internships. He couldn't jumpstart a dead car battery to save his life. Family barbecues felt like psychological warfare. My parents and I showed up in our best Walmart outfits, trying to look presentable. They flaunted designer clothes, bragged about luxury vacations. Places we couldn't even dream of affording. They got high off making us feel small. Year after year, they made sure we never forgot our place in the family hierarchy. They never said it straight up. That would require actual backbone. Their nasty, passive-aggressive comments did the job. Every Sunday, we'd drive to Grandpa's place. Dennis and Pamela rolled up in their leased cars, complaining about traffic. Like they were doing everyone a favor by showing up. Grandpa would grab my shoulder. "Come on, kid. Let's see if we can get that Chevy running right." His garage was my church. 3 professional bays with lifts, tools organized like a military armory. Parts sorted by decade and application. Smelled like motor oil, WD-40, and honest work. This was where a man who understood machinery went to solve problems. We'd spend hours rebuilding carburetors, welding exhausts. A '58 Impala, his first big purchase after the business took off. A '70 Challenger he'd rescued from a downstate barn. Cars that needed patience, skill, and respect for the engineering. "Your dad's the only one who never came crawling back," he'd say. Dennis borrowed $22,000. Still waiting for that check. Pamela wanted me to co-sign on that house she couldn't afford. Why do they think they deserve handouts? They never learned the difference between earning and expecting. I messed up raising them. He was right. I was 14 when Dad took a nasty spill off scaffolding. Messed up 2 discs, tore his rotator cuff, destroyed his knee bad enough to need surgery. Workers' comp was basically legalized robbery. They fought every claim, questioned every doctor, dragged out payments. We were 4 months behind on everything. I watched my parents stress about bills at the kitchen table, wondering if we'd end up homeless because Dad got hurt at work. Know who stepped up without being asked? Grandpa Walter showed up with groceries, a rent check. Made it clear this wasn't charity. This was family handling family business. Bought me new work boots when mine fell apart. Paid for wrestling gear so I could stay on the team. Covered my senior trip so I wouldn't be the only kid left out. Never held it over our heads during arguments. Who didn't send a get well card? The Lexus driving uncle and Escalade aunt. Too busy to help their own brother. Dennis was dealing with cash flow challenges. Pamela was redecorating her kitchen, couldn't spare the expense. They found time to lecture my parents on financial planning. That winter, while Dad was laid up, we ate cereal for dinner. Pamela bragged about her $12,000 furniture set at Christmas. Dennis went on about his family ski trip to Colorado. Blowing more on one vacation than we spent on food in 6 months. That's when I realized how messed up the family was. Pamela always compared me to her son. As I got older, the comparisons got worse. She turned every conversation into a twisted performance. I was always failing to meet Justin's standards. Thanksgiving 2019 was peak insanity. Justin had just gotten a promotion at his startup. Senior business development strategist. Waltzed into Grandpa's house in a charcoal suit. Talking loudly on his iPhone about optimizing market penetration. Pamela was practically floating with pride. Justin secured a partnership with a Fortune 500 company. His firm's valuation increased 400% this quarter. "Dennis, didn't you mention they're preparing for an IPO?" "Absolutely," Dennis jumped in, enabling Pamela's delusions. Justin's position for the next wave of digital market expansion. I sat there in my cleanest Levi's and a Walmart flannel, watching this performance. Pamela gave me that look. "And Lucas, what's new with you? Still working at that garage?" I stayed calm. "Yeah, fixing things when they break," I said. "Someone's got to know how things actually work." "Of course. How practical," she said, like I had cancer. "Justin, tell Lucas about your promotion. Maybe he could learn about expanding his horizons." Later, while the adults argued politics in the living room, Justin cornered me in the kitchen. "Look, Lucas, I get you're doing your thing. But have you considered real opportunities? I could probably get you an interview at my company. Entry level, obviously, but you'd learn about actual business. What makes you think I want to work for your company? Well, I mean, look where you are. Almost 30, still renting, working for someone else. Don't you want more?" I set down my drink and studied this kid. Same age as me, but never learned talking down to people was a terrible strategy. "Justin, you make PowerPoints for a living. I rebuild engines. When your car breaks down, you call AAA and pray someone like me shows up. Let's discuss who's got the real skills. There's more to success than grease under your fingernails. And there's more to intelligence than using $10 words for 5-cent ideas." He walked away looking hurt. I went back to my Coke. Through the kitchen window, I saw my parents helping Grandpa clear dishes. Dennis and Pamela sat in the living room, discussing whether the house would need updating before selling for maximum profit. They were already dividing Grandpa's life, and he was still eating dinner. 3 years ago, Grandpa Walter started having memory issues. Forgetting where he put his glasses, asking the same question twice. getting confused about what day it was. Dennis and Pamela treated these slip-ups like he'd been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. They got super concerned about his cognitive decline and capacity to make decisions. Dad needs to plan for his future, Dennis announced at Easter dinner. Talking about Grandpa like he wasn't sitting right there. Assisted living facilities are like luxury hotels now. Translation, let's warehouse the old man. Pamela jumped on board with her sledgehammer subtlety. Dad, you're all alone in that big house. Wouldn't it be nice having people your own age around? I wasn't having any of that nonsense. Started visiting twice a week after work, Tuesdays and Fridays, plus most weekends. Brought dinner from Kowalski's Polish kitchen, his favorite spot. Made pierogi like his mom used to. Helped organize the 17 different medications that kept multiplying. Fixed whatever was broken, from leaky faucets to windows that wouldn't close. I wasn't doing it for money. I genuinely loved the old man. He taught me everything since I was a kid. Now it was my turn to be his backbone. More than the practical stuff, we'd just hang out. Sat in his living room watching Cubs games. Arguing whether today's players were softer than old school guys. He'd tell stories I'd never heard. About building his business from scratch. About my grandmother, who died when I was too young to remember. About my dad as a kid. How proud he was that his youngest son chose principles over profit. These conversations happened while I fixed stuff around his house. Replacing garbage disposals, cleaning gutters, touching up paint where walls got dinged. Work that needed doing, but nobody else wanted to do. Family visits became less frequent as Grandpa needed actual help. Dennis showed up maybe once a month. Spent 10 minutes asking about health stuff. Then 40 minutes discussing estate planning and asset optimization. Always had some financial emergency. The BMW needed transmission work insurance wouldn't cover. Justin's student loans were bigger than expected, messing with Dennis's credit as co-signer. The consulting firm was restructuring, and Dennis needed a safety net. Meaning, give me money so I can keep pretending I'm successful. Pamela's visits followed the same script. Quick concern about Grandpa's health. Then lengthy discussions about how expensive home maintenance was. How much simpler life would be in managed care. Justin visited exactly 6 times in 3 years. Each visit lasted under 40 minutes, usually involved urgent phone calls. One time, I showed up to find Justin had set up a mobile office in Grandpa's dining room. Laptop, wireless printer, legal pads covered with charts. Been there 2 hours, said maybe 10 words to the man who owned the house. Working on something important. Client presentation Monday. Major deal hanging in the balance. Couldn't do this at your place? Mom's got book club. Too noisy. Grandpa's house was just quiet office space. After Justin left, Grandpa and I sat on his back porch drinking. Watching his neighbor's dog destroy their flower bed. That boy spent 3 hours here and never looked up from his computer. Maybe he's changing the world. Maybe. Or maybe he's just a jerk who thinks being busy is being important. By 2023, Grandpa's health was sliding downhill fast. Not his mind, that stayed sharp as a knife until the end. But his body was giving out, moving slower, getting tired easier. Needing help with stuff he'd always handled himself. The family's response was predictable. More pressure to simplify his living situation. More suggestions about professional care. More discussions about what's best for Dad that never included asking him. I started coming every Tuesday and Friday after work, plus most Saturdays. We'd go through his mail together since scammers target old people like sharks smell blood. Helped with grocery runs, yard work, any heavy lifting. I started noticing stuff that ticked me off. Expensive items disappeared from Grandpa's house. Then showed up in social media photos from Dennis's or Pamela's places. An antique clock from his hallway vanished for 2 weeks. Then appeared in Pamela's Instagram post about entertaining at home. When I mentioned it, Grandpa just smiled. Oh, I know exactly where everything goes. Been keeping track longer than you might think. Aren't you mad, kid? I've been watching this family's true colors for years. Takes more than missing silverware to surprise me now. One Friday evening, I walked in to find him at his kitchen table. Folders spread out like he was running a board meeting. Each folder had a family member's name on it. Grandpa, what are you doing? Project. Been documenting everyone's behavior for 3 years. Visits, phone calls, money requests, actual help provided. Versus inheritance expectations expressed. He opened Dennis's folder first. Dennis is into me for $47,000 over 3 years. Car repairs, property taxes, Justin's expenses. Always promises payback once his next big deal comes through. Funny, that deal never happens. Pamela's folder was thicker. Notes about her constant suggestions to downsize, sell, or relocate. Photos of missing items. Copies of credit card statements showing charges to his accounts. For everything. Justin's folder was the thinnest. Kid's been here 7 times in 2 years. Average visit, 23 minutes, most of it on his phone or laptop. Wait, why are you documenting all this? Because I want to be fair. He pulled out one more folder labeled with my name. You've been here 247 times since your dad got hurt 3 years ago. Never asked me for anything. Just showed up and did whatever needed doing. That's just being family. No, kiddo. That's being a man. Big difference. He closed all the folders and looked at me. I'm going to ask you to do something when the time comes. You'll know when that is. I need you to trust me completely. Even if what happens doesn't make sense at first. Can you do that? Of course. Good. 2 months later, Grandpa got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4, aggressive. Basically a death sentence with a timeline. The closer he got to checking out, the more the family revealed their true selves. Dennis became obsessed with preserving Dad's legacy. Meant making sure business assets were properly managed. Started showing up with legal documents, powers of attorney. Would let Dennis make financial decisions if Dad became unable to handle affairs. Just a precaution, Dennis would explain. We want everything handled professionally if your condition gets worse. Grandpa examined these documents with the same expression he got for telemarketers. I'll think about it, he'd say. Then file the papers somewhere they'd disappear forever. Pamela took a different angle. Started bringing real estate agents to informally assess the house value. Financial advisors to discuss portfolio optimization. Elder care specialists to evaluate Grandpa's changing needs. Dad, we just want you to have options, she'd say. While some suit walked through his living room. I've got options, daughter. Stay in my house till I die or stay in my house till I die. But they kept pushing. Every visit became a sales pitch for some new scheme. To simplify his life and reduce his burden. Meanwhile, I showed up after 10-hour days fixing cars. Bringing dinner, helping navigate medical bureaucracy. We'd sit in his garage, him in his old chair. While I worked on whatever car was on his lift. He'd share observations about the family, getting sharper. Dennis borrowed money again last month, he mentioned. While I changed oil in his Tacoma. Some cryptocurrency mining thing guaranteed to triple his investment. Kid doesn't understand when something sounds too good to be true, someone's getting screwed. During one visit, Pamela showed up with Justin. They spent an hour walking through the house. Pamela taking photos, Justin measuring rooms for space planning purposes. During his final months, Grandpa asked me to help with paperwork organization. We'd spend hours going through files, sorting documents. He was creating new documentation. Detailed logs of every family interaction. Photos of his possessions with dates and descriptions. Video recordings of conversations with Dennis and Pamela. About selling the house and optimizing his estate for tax efficiency. 3 weeks before he died, Grandpa asked me to help with something in his basement. Behind the water heater was a safe built into the concrete foundation. He opened it and pulled out more folders than I'd seen in most offices. Legal documents, financial records. A complete inventory of everything he owned. Been keeping detailed records, he said matter-of-factly. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it. This is for you, kid. Open it after I'm gone. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small key. Lucas, if you're reading this, know I've been planning something. It's going to upset a lot of people. The key opened Safety Deposit Box 847 at First National downtown. Inside you'll find copies of everything that matters. I've been testing this family for years, kid. You passed every test without knowing you were taking them. Trust Larson. Remember what I taught you about tools. They're only as good as the hands holding them. And by the way, it's a little too dark here. Grandpa Walter, even when gone, managed to make me smile. Grandpa died on a Tuesday morning in April. I'd taken the day off because he'd had a rough week. My gut told me not to leave him alone. We spent the morning sorting his medications. Watched The Price is Right, arguing about whether contestants were getting dumber. He dozed off in his recliner around noon. When I checked an hour later, he was gone. Peaceful as you could ask for. Just decided he was tired and clocked out. The family showed up within an hour like a SWAT team. Dennis and Pamela bustling around, making calls, handling arrangements. Like Grandpa's death was a business deal requiring immediate management. We'll take care of everything, Pamela announced. With all the warmth of a tax auditor. You don't need to stress about the details. They took over his house like it was D-Day. Dennis started securing important documents to make sure nothing got lost. Pamela called funeral homes and florists. Planning a service to properly honor Dad's standing in the community. Justin spent most of the time on his phone, apparently managing some business crisis that couldn't wait. Sorry, guys. Timing's terrible, but we're closing a major deal. Grandpa would get it. He was a businessman. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect. Dennis delivered a eulogy about Walter Kowalski's entrepreneurial legacy. Instead of talking about the actual human being we were burying, Pamela organized everything like a wedding, making sure everyone knew how much effort she put into honoring Dad's memory. After the service, over catered sandwiches, I heard Dennis talking to Pamela about moving quickly on estate matters, securing business assets before market conditions shifted. 2 weeks went by. I went back to work, tried processing grief. Nobody called. Thursday night, I'm eating when my phone buzzes. Text from Justin, family meeting tomorrow at Larson's office, 2 p.m. Mom says, keep this between immediate family only. 30 seconds later, sorry, wrong group chat. Just ignore that. Confirmation my own family was planning to exclude me from Grandpa's estate meeting. An accidental text revealing how much they respected me. The man who'd been more of a father figure than anyone else. These people spent my life treating my parents like embarrassing relatives. Acting like honest work was beneath their borrowed sophistication. Pretending their leveraged lifestyle made them better than us. I called Bruno and told him I needed Friday off. Personal emergency. He just said, handle your business, kid. Because he's good people. That night, I opened Grandpa's envelope. Tomorrow felt like the kind of day I'd need preparation for. Friday morning, I put on my least crappy clothes and drove downtown. If Grandpa Walter wanted me there, I was going to be there. The waiting room at Larson's looked like central casting for privileged jerks of Chicago. Dennis in his navy power suit, checking his Rolex every 30 seconds. Pamela clutching her knockoff Hermes bag. Justin typing furiously about urgent synergy emergencies. When I walked through those glass doors, you could have heard a pin drop. What the heck are you doing here? Dennis jumped up. Same thing you are. Saying goodbye to Grandpa Walter. Lucas, honey, Pamela spoke with her usual tone. This is really just for people involved in Walter's business affairs. Technical matters that wouldn't interest someone in your situation. Before I could tell her where to shove her technical matters, Larson emerged. Distinguished, silver-haired guy with decades of experience settling family wars. Lucas Hayes, Walter spoke of you constantly. Dennis's face went through about 6 different colors. There's been a misunderstanding. Lucas wasn't supposed to be included. Walter's grandson, the one visiting 3 times weekly. Walter was extremely thorough in his communications. Extremely thorough. I took a seat near the door. Everyone else huddled at the far end like poverty was contagious. Larson opened folders thick as dictionaries. Before we begin, Walter was specific about his intentions. He was also aware items were removed from his residence without authorization. Dead silence. Walter installed comprehensive security throughout his property 8 months ago. He documented every family interaction, every loan, every questionable transaction. Larson flipped through his notes. Including the $31,000 you've borrowed, Mr. Novak. For various investment opportunities that never resulted in repayment. Dennis went white. Those were family loans. Walter understood what the money was for. He also understood promises to repay were meaningless without intention. Larson turned to Pamela. Mrs. Novak, Walter documented $12,000 in unauthorized charges to his accounts. Salons, shopping, vacations. When questioned, you claimed these were household management expenses. Pamela's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. I was helping manage his affairs. Someone needed to charge $200 manicures to his American Express. Walter found those household necessities quite fascinating. Justin looked up from his iPad. What about me? Larson smiled like a shark. You haven't borrowed money, Mr. Cole. You've simply ignored your grandfather. While photographing his house for social media posts about family legacy, Walter kept visitor logs. 9 visits in 3 years, averaging 31 minutes, mostly on business calls. Larson pulled out the actual will. By contrast, Lucas visited 247 times. Provided transportation, household assistance, companionship. Never requested money. With that context, Walter Stanley Kowalski's final wishes. To my son Dennis, who called 40 times requesting money but visited 11 times in 3 years. Who borrowed $31,000 for investments any rational person would recognize as scams. I leave $1 and the suggestion he learn the difference between earning and expecting. Dennis's face went gray. To my daughter Pamela, who charged $12,000 in personal expenses while claiming care management. Who brought real estate agents without permission. I leave $1 and the recommendation she discover the dignity of earning her own way. Pamela started hyperventilating like someone was strangling her. To my grandson Justin, who spent more time in my house conducting business than speaking with me. I leave $1 and the advice that networking is meaningless without character. Justin dropped his iPad. It hit the conference table like a gunshot. Larson cleared his throat. To my grandson Lucas, who showed up 247 times without being asked. Who never requested money or favors. Who demonstrated the values I spent my life trying to instill. I leave the entirety of my estate. The room went dead silent. This includes my residence, the commercial property housing Kowalski Plumbing and Heating. All business assets and accounts, personal financial accounts. My classic automobile collection, and every tool in my garage. Total estimated value, approximately $3.7 million. The room exploded like someone detonated a bomb in a daycare center. Dennis screamed about undue influence. Pamela collapsed into Oscar-worthy sobs. Justin frantically called lawyers on his cracked screen. Larson waited for the hysteria to die down. There's also the matter of $73,000 worth of items removed without authorization. Walter maintained a complete inventory with photographic evidence. All items must be returned within 30 days, or we will file criminal charges. And refer the matter to the state's attorney. He looked straight at me. Walter wanted me to deliver a personal message. The boy knows the difference between a wrench and a weapon. I trust him to use both appropriately when the time comes. Dennis finally found his voice. This is your doing. You manipulated a sick old man. You piece of garbage. I didn't reply, just smiled. Thinking about all those Tuesday and Friday evenings fixing his garbage disposal. Driving him to chemo, just being there because that's what you do for family. Nah, Uncle Dennis. Grandpa Walter knew exactly what he was doing. He always did. For the first time in my life, I was the one walking out. While everyone else sat there trying to figure out what just happened. The next 3 months were pure chaos, and I loved every second. Dennis hired a bottom-feeder attorney named Sullivan, who took one look at Grandpa's documentation and told him to start practicing. Would you like fries with that? The old man had built a legal fortress that would have impressed the FBI. Security footage was devastating. Hours of video showing Dennis loading stolen tools into his Lexus. Pamela wrapping jewelry while Grandpa napped in his chair. Justin pocketing collectible coins during his brief visits. Pamela tried playing victim on Facebook. Posting about family betrayal and honoring the deceased. Backfired when people who knew Grandpa commented about how he'd been abandoned by his own kids. Justin's startup folded 3 weeks after the will reading. Investors were expecting family money that wasn't coming anymore. Without Grandpa's cash injection, their revolutionary platform was basically connecting websites to other websites. For fees nobody wanted to pay. Larson filed preliminary motions, including Grandpa's video testimonials. Recorded with multiple attorney witnesses. 3 hours of a completely competent old man explaining why he was cutting his family out. Dennis thinks debt equals investment. Pamela thinks spending other people's money makes her sophisticated. Justin thinks talking about success is the same as achieving it. Lucas shows up and doesn't ask for anything. The choice seems obvious to me. They returned the stolen items within a month via moving companies. No apologies, just legal minimums to avoid criminal prosecution. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was freedom to fix everything that had been broken. First priority, my parents. Paid off 30 years of accumulated debt. Credit cards maxed when Dad got hurt. Medical bills that never stopped coming. Truck loans and mortgage payments. Then bought them a solid ranch house in a quiet neighborhood. Where they could actually relax. 3 bedrooms, a 2-car garage for Dad's woodworking hobby. A decent yard for Mom's garden she'd never had space for. Watching Dad's face when I handed him the deed was worth every awkward family dinner. How much do we owe you for this? Nothing, Dad. It's paid for. Yours free and clear. Mom started crying right there in the real estate office. Happy tears for once. Kept Kowalski Plumbing running with changes Grandpa would have approved. Promoted Joe and Danny to full partnerships. Gave everyone raises and profit sharing. Turns out, when you pay people well and treat them with respect, they work hard to make the business succeed. Set up the Walter Kowalski Memorial Scholarship Fund. For working-class kids learning trades. $25,000 annually, helping kids develop real skills. Instead of drowning in student debt for degrees in strategic communication studies. Helped 19 kids so far get certifications. That pay more than Justin's startup ever did. Bought myself a house with a proper 3-bay garage. For classic car restoration. Nothing flashy, just comfortable and functional. 6 months later, Saturday afternoon, I'm installing brake pads. I hear a Hyundai Elantra pull up outside through the window. Pamela gets out, looking like she'd aged 20 years. Escalade obviously gone. Target clothes, gas station purse. I kept working, pretending I didn't see her walking up my driveway. Like she was headed for execution. Lucas, can we talk? I looked up, wiped my hands on a shop rag. Probably cleaner than her current financial situation. What's up, Aunt? The family's going through some difficulties. Dennis lost his position. Justin's struggling to find work. We thought maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement. She was cataloging my professional equipment, organized tools. Classic cars in various stages of restoration, calculating values. Wondering how much she could guilt out of me. Family arrangement. You're obviously in a position to help now. Family should support family during hard times. I set down my wrench and gave her my full attention. Same woman who'd spent decades treating my parents like embarrassing relatives. Who'd raised a son to think people like me were beneath him. That's interesting. Where was family support when Dad was hurt? When Mom worked 3 jobs to avoid eviction. That was different. We didn't realize how bad things were. You mean you didn't want to know? Real tears this time, not the crocodile tears she'd used to manipulate Grandpa. Dennis is losing the house. We're living on credit cards. We don't have anywhere else to turn. Get jobs. It's not that simple at our age. We don't have the right connections anymore. I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. Pamela, you're 44, not 84. Most people work their way up instead of expecting to start at the top. We don't know how to do that. We've never had to struggle like you and your parents. And whose fault is that? She straightened up, a flash of the old entitled Pamela. You're just going to watch your family suffer. My family's doing great. They're inside that house I bought them. Planning the Alaska cruise I'm sending them on next month. They're comfortable for the first time in their lives. Because I take care of people who took care of me. We're family, too. I walked over to my toolbox, pulled out Grandpa Walter's original pipe wrench. The first tool he bought when he started his business. No, Pamela, your DNA. There's a difference. Come on, Lucas. Just think about it. What would Walter want? He believed in forgiveness, second chances, helping people. Walter spent 3 years documenting how you treated him. When you thought he was too sick to fight back. You failed. I gestured around my garage. He wanted his life's work going to someone who'd build something. Instead of someone who'd blow at maintaining appearances. Please, I'm begging you. Dennis is talking about bankruptcy. Justin's behind on his loans. Not my problem. You spent 30 years treating me and my parents like dirt. Acting like we were beneath you. Pretending your borrowed lifestyle made you better than people. We can change. We can do better. Maybe you can, but you'll prove that to someone else. Because I'm done with this family's version of love. That only shows up when someone needs something. I walked to the garage door, hit the button. Universal signal, this conversation was over. Pamela, don't come back unless you're here to apologize. For 30 years of disrespect to my parents. She stood there, cycling through every manipulation tactic she'd learned. Then shuffled back to her crappy car and drove away. Leaving behind 30 years of entitlement that finally ran out of other people's money. I went back to the Ram 1500, finished the brake job, cleaned up. Thinking about Grandpa's final lesson. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people experience consequences. 3 hours later, my parents came out with cold drinks. Stories about their morning at the garden center. Dad bought a workbench for his new garage. Mom was planting raised beds for vegetables she'd never had space to grow. Through their kitchen window, I saw Alaska cruise brochures on their dining table. First real vacation in 25 years. Grandpa Walter always said, the best revenge is living well. Turns out the old man was right. If this story hit you, if it made you cheer for justice, like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment, what would you do with $3.7 million? Help family who betrayed you, or let them learn? Subscribe for more stories like this. Everyone's a reminder, hard work and heart always win.